Well, as you probably read in both the Zoom notice and the Pygmy Owl, Ken is a stewardship biologist with the Washington Department of Natural Resources, small forest landowner office. And he has a very interesting sounding presentation on dead trees. And I very much look forward to it. The floor is yours, Ken. Oh, and your mic, there you go.
There we go. So I'm unmuted. Thanks, Gary. I appreciate that. Just say, can hear me okay? Everybody give me a little thumbs up. Okay, every now and then I'm going to ask for some visual feedback there. But when I start, I think I'm going to make everybody go away so I can just go through the show, and I'll count on Lindell to interrupt me if something is really goofy. So I'm trying an experiment where I'm speaking into a microphone that's also for the music, but okay, good. So yeah, I'm the stewardship biologist for the DNR Small Forest Landowner Group. I'll show you a map here in a minute, and I have this enviable task of covering the whole state of Washington to share with people ideas about forest management and habitat. So my particular spin is to help people make their habitat at least as good or better by way of actively managing their small forest lands. And as we know, there's lots going on in the forest with drought and fires and overstock stands, et cetera. But underneath of that, natural habitat is part of the deal. And I've been doing this sort of stuff since 1980 something. So that's quite a while. And it's turned out I've entered that phase of my career where the question people ask is, no longer, oh, what do you think about? But it's, when are you going to retire? Which I think is funny, but I have had this ongoing campaign that you're going to hear about tonight, which is in regard to dead wood, and that's what the topic is all about. So that's what we're going to do. So let's see, Lindell, if I can share screen, you have to enable, I think Lindell has to, there you go. She has to make me a co-host so I can share my screen. So I don't know what just happened there. Sorry. Forgive us. We're entering this brave new world. Okay, there's my presentation. You can't see that yet, can you? Okay, help me out here. Share screen. There we go. All right. There we go. Now you guys can see that, right? Excellent. Okay. And can you see the screen, ladies and gentlemen? I'm assuming that you're seeing what I'm seeing. Yes? Madonna, I can see your thumbs up. Okay, good. Well, we've got a little bit of a catchy lead in here in relation to a movie. We tried this with WSU. So can I ask another question? I'm moving the little faces around here. Is that what you see too? Or do you control the faces yourselves? Can you see the little people off to the side, Madonna? No, you can't? I mean, right, if I go like that, do you disappear? Do you see what I'm doing to my screen, or all you can see of mine is the PowerPoint, correct? Okay.
PowerPoint.
You can just see the PowerPoint. Okay, so I have you guys over here. All right, so I'm going to make you go away so you don't distract me. There we go. All right, so hi, Ken Bevis, DNR Stewardship Biologist. We're going to talk about dead trees and their excellent adventure. There's nothing bogus about dead wood. You might remember this film that came out a few years ago, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and it was a cult hit a few years back. A lot of people really thought it was fun. Well, they're redoing it. You might not have heard this, and it's going to be called Bill and Ted Face the Snag. They're doing a whole version of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure about dead wood. And it's in pre-production right now. I've actually got a role as a technical advisor. So stay tuned on that one, because this is going to follow the one that just came out. So there you go. Okay, and you can verify that yourself later on at the Google box. So here we are. Small landowners own about 4.5 million acres of forest land in the state of Washington, represented by this dark green color. And there's actually more than this now. So there's somewhere in the order of 215 to 215,000 families and individuals that own this land, these dark green blobs. And you'll note there's quite a bit of it around Spokane and in Stevens and Pend Oreille County. there's quite a concentration of these people with 20, 30, 10, 180 acres. And over here in Western Washington, Snohomish, Lewis County in particular, Thurston. Well, these are the people that we help. And so there's this group of us, Matt Preventure, that's Julie Sackett, myself, and we help people with between 5 and I say 2,000 we could help. But generally, once you get into a really big piece, it becomes more of an industrial. But we help people write their stewardship plans. We help them get cost shares. We give advice about, and my job is to give advice about habitat. I do a lot of work with WSU Extension, doing classes, and we do conservation district collaboration. There's our website. If you happen to own forest land or know somebody, I'll give you my contact here at the end, but there it is, SFLO, Small Forest Landowner Office. Okay, end of the commercial. Now, here's what we're going to talk about. Presentation outline. I'm going to say something about the forest and the dynamics. We're going to say, what is a tree? We're going to talk about the life cycle of dead trees. I love the oxymoronic elements of that. Primary cavity excavator species, secondary species. I'm going to do a song or two rolled in there that are hopefully appropriate on task. The tree falls over, it becomes a down log. A little bit about management, because sometimes people will go, okay, can I get it? You know, dead trees are important. How many do we need? That sort of thing. And I'm going to tell you about fire. And fire was a real big topic this past year. So I've got a story to share about after the fire too. So here we go. So forests are in motion. Forests are not static. And we always think of them as being these, stately, the same all the time, but they're really not. Forests are changing slowly, usually slowly with time. I mean, because a tree grows a couple of inches a year out at the tips, and the diameter increases incrementally depending on the growth rate and everything, the rings and such. But it's a slow motion dynamic system. And there's a lot going on here, and here's a big dead tree right here, which is kind of part of the topic. So you have to think of a forest as being this dynamic system that indeed is changing with time. And the habitat elements are related to the condition of the stand at any given point in time. So here's an interesting thing that forests are made out of trees. I'm trying to get rid of this little thing up here in the top. How do I make that go away so I can see what I'm looking at? Oh, never mind. Sorry, I'm being
Just one point where we have some people on the chat saying they can't see this, and I'm not sure why.
Oh, okay. All right, let's back out here. They can't see the presentation?
They're not seeing the shared screen, some, not all.
Okay. All right, let's see.
There's a button with 2 squares, a large square and a smaller. And if you select that, it'll give you the presentation over most of your screen.
Okay, let's see. All right, I just did something dumb here. Sorry, people. Okay, now I'm sitting here at a Zoom screen. That is all. Your screen sharing is paused. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Screens. Okay, new share. Here we go. Going back to the share. Why is my screen sharing paused? Okay, here we go. Can you see that now? Okay, I'm back to the slideshow from the current slide. I can't see the chat, so here I'll go open the, no, sorry. I don't know how to do that. Excuse me, everybody, I'm being a dope here. This is where the Zoom starts to break down. Is when you have people only coherent in the use of the tool.
Yeah. Ken, I think you're just fine. We have a button that we can select,
Okay.
we get, and the one that everybody wants, there's a pretty good size rectangle and a smaller rectangle in the right corner. And if you click on that, you'll see the presentation properly.
Okay, so I'm good. I'm sharing and you guys are toggling in and out of how the share is being done, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Gary, I'm going to count on you to rescue me if I do something stupid. Like if my sound is bad,
You're
because
looking for the wrong help.
Okay, well, then somebody. So, okay, and my voice is okay? The sound is okay? Gary?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, because I have no chat. I turned it off. I'm looking at the PowerPoint and talking into the microphone. Okay, good. So I'm counting on you to rescue me verbally if something's goofy, Gary. And for those who lost the screen, it's probably some setting on your computer, which I can't really help you with. And so, okay. So forestry in motion, they're always changing. There you go.
Well, Donna, I'm
Yep.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We've got people waiting to get in and I can't see the waiting room anymore. Can
Oh,
you-
okay.
Yeah.
Stand by. Okay, here I'll go. I'll minimize. Now you can look, right? Or do I have to go to where you can you see the waiting room now?
No, I've, somehow my screen's just all messed up and I can just see the little boxes. And I've got somebody who's waiting.
Oh, I wonder if I can let them in.
If you can see someone in the waiting room,
Where is the waiting room? I'm looking at
it
chat.
should be above the list of participants and
Oh, participants. Okay, there's
okay,
participants.
I can do that now.
Okay, good. You take care of that and then I'll go back
I
to the slideshow. Okay, good. Tell me when you're done.
Okay, you can keep on going. I'm good.
Okay, your screen sharing is paused. New share, here we go. We'll just go back to there. Okay, what do you think? Are we good? Gary, we good? Forests are made out of trees? Somebody tell me I'm back in the game here.
It looks good, Ken.
Okay, good. Okay, so forests are in motion and they're made out of trees. Well, trees are really three-dimensional habitat features that change over time. And recall that my emphasis here is habitat and that the wildlife is a response to habitat conditions. And trees are essentially the main habitat thing in forests, but they're three-dimensional and they're changing all the time over, all that they're changing over time. And in a natural forest, there's trees in different levels in the overstory. There's big ones, there's little ones. I mean, and it varies a lot depending obviously on the type of forest, the type of trees, but there's trees that'll be dead, like standing there as part of this whole forest structure that might have these amazing habitat features like this pileated woodpecker excavation here. There might be trees that have these scars, like this grand fir on the left had a fire approach it sometime, oh gosh, years before, and it's probably hollow. I mean, there's a marvelous habitat tree. And look at all the Douglas squirrel cone scales all around the base of that grand fir. So the squirrels have been using this tree as a place to eat. Here's a cedar with another scar. So they're wearing their history on the outside of them. Well, in the forest, trees also die, and they die regularly. And they might die a few at a time, say in a little cluster, often from insects, say beetles or something, or one tree succumb to drought. Often, frankly, you don't know. This fungus might have clogged it up. Or you could have a whole bunch die at once, like in a major event, such as a fire. And a fire is kind of classic. This is a little piece of the Carlton complex with a crown fire. In many forest types, Western Washington in particular, there's this phenomenon called root rot, which is a fungal presence, and I don't like to call it an infection. That's the wrong word because it just is. It's out there in the forest soil, it occupies sites, and it'll kill trees in little pockets, but it's a slow burn. It like takes out little circles of Douglas firs, hemlock, whatever type it is, and they'll create these mortality pockets. Here's a little piece of the Carlton complex that's up by Aspen Lake. And this is 1 year after the fire. And look at those big stems there. This is over by Sherman Pass, and Chris Loggers knows this area well. This is 30 years ago. That picture was taken 2 years ago, I believe. And look at the understory of lodgepole coming in, lodgepole and larch coming in. Well, that's 30 years later. That's a lot of standing dead trees right there. Anybody been to Yellowstone, since 1988 or recently? And I could ask Chris this question because his daughter works there. There's a lot of dead trees standing in Yellowstone still, and it's been Yeah, a lot of years. So there you go. So wind throw, same thing, bust them off, knock them over. This happens on the west side as a major event. Here's a wind throw event near Colville. A lot happens near Colville. That was a microburst, busted off a bunch of trees in just a matter of minutes, killing trees. And I'm sure we've all seen these, up in the high mountains somewhere will be these totally cool structures like this one on the right. This is over on the Skycomish. Skycomish. And this man owned this beautiful piece of property. He wanted to, and a bear had regularly denned in the bottom of that old scarred snag there, which has been there for a long time. Well, here's the main point, is whatever the event that killed the trees would always persist for a long time, even when it's been burned. So wood is this remarkable substance that endures for a long time. I mean, why else do we build buildings out of it? And when it breaks down under the influence mostly of fungus, it's usually a combination of moisture and temperature, et cetera, but wood persists in the ecology. So along that line, let's just speak for a moment about what's a tree, because we think of trees as being these, holistic organisms, all working together. Well, a tree is that. I mean, it's a magnificent plant with long-lived potential, usually, and it has multiple defense mechanisms, particularly bark and waxy coatings on the leaves and resin ducts in the tree, where if an enemy, usually an insect, tries to burrow into the tree is able to literally spit it out. Well, not literally spit, but kind of by way of releasing resins to pitch it out. And when a tree gets drought stress, it doesn't have that defense. But a tree is not really an integrated organism. There's a lot of different functions going on in all these different things. So that leads to this. So here's the groovy Bing diagram. And thanks, Bing, whoever Bing is. And the whole thing about the outer layer right under the bark. Let's see here, I got my little pointer there. The cambium layer right here. So I like to ask live class, which parts of a tree are alive? And alive being in the high school biology definition, and that is cell division, metabolism, those two particular things. And the only parts of a tree that are alive are the leaves, photosynthesis, the cambium right here around the bark, and the root tips. The rest of the tree is some kind of supportive and conductive tissue. So the heartwood is supportive tissue because it's no longer conducting. The xylem, let's see, here's the xylem. Yeah, this outer layer right here brings water from down in the ground up to the leaves. And the phloem here brings photosynthate, or it's not really nutrients, but things created through photosynthesis from the root, from the leaves down to the root. So you've got this two-way conduction going on with the bark protecting it and the inner part of the tree holding it up. Well, most of a tree is dead tissue. Most of a tree is like your fingernails. Well, yeah, it's kind of like your fingernails, but a tree is mostly made up of little tubes, the tracheas. It's like a whole series of straws, stacked on top of each other. And something really interesting is that trees also can compartmentalize areas that have been influenced particularly by fungus. And so say like heart rot in a tree proceeds really slowly because the tree is essentially resisting the spread of this particular other organism that's now in the wood. But here's the point, that a tree is mostly dead tissue. It's mostly made up of wood. And that wood persists, as we've already said. So here, let's look at a life cycle of a dead tree leading up to habitat. So here's your live tree, everything, that happy large tree. This is up by Lost Lake, by the way, up by Bonaparte Lake, beautiful place. And when it dies, soon after death, it still has all the little twigs, and the cambium is still there. Well, the cambium layer is where most of the sugars, the readily available sugars, are, right under the bark. And in a very short order, as the twigs fall off, the insects get in there and go after that cambium. So when you lift the bark off of a piece of dead wood and you see all these little channels in here, these were insects that were feeding on and right under the cambium in the early phases of the life cycle of a dead tree. And so the shallow holes like this that a woodpecker makes through the bark basically is going after these guys, going after the larvae of these guys. And this phase goes on for, oh gosh, 3, 5, 7 years. And then the cambium's gone. And then you're going into essentially the whole decay process. It's a whole a variety of different insects and different funguses that participate in the breakdown of the dead tree. And it lasts a long time. So this thing ages over many decades. So after a certain amount of time, you know, the bark falls off, but the wood often is still hard. I mean, it has different levels of softness depending on the type of tree, depending on the setting. There's a lot of variability here, but you know, then it becomes a hard snag. If it's lucky, it gets a woodpecker cavity like this one. And then they break down, you know, they start to fall apart into the soft, punky stuff that we know. There's some predictability to this. And this is from a nature trail sign over by Lake Quinault, but I just like this timeline here, you know, so year 2, the fine branches are still on there. I think this is actually a little bit hasty. I think it takes a little bit longer than that, but you know, this is probably more like year 40, but here's 40, 70, 100, 200 years later, it's still there, but it's short. I think that 200 should be like here, but it doesn't matter. Point being, it takes a long time for these trees to break down even when they're still standing. And I make this comment often that a tree will last as long dead as it did alive. And so the ecological significance of that is pretty enormous. Falls over, becomes a log, starts to participate in the soil process, et cetera. And logs break down pretty slowly, much more slowly than the finer branches because of in the way that fungus operates. And I just think this is a little aside, interesting tidbit, but this is over on the west side. But here's coltsfoot, this plant growing, and look at all this moss on the wood substrate of the log itself. And there's a whole different plant community on the wood than there is on the soil. So this is a different world going on than down here, all based on the fact that that tree grew big enough, died, stood for a while, then fell over, becoming into the log and all of these different things. Oh, and the one that we pay a lot of attention to is the nurse log. So here's a spruce tree growing out of a down log over on the Olympic Peninsula, I believe. Yeah, and that very same phenomenon. And here's habitat niches, all that 3D complexity involved with this down log. Like this would be a great place if this was near a river for a mink to live, right up in that hole, right there in that down log. So there you go. And the wood becomes soil. You know, it's a slow breakdown process. And so the log feeding the forest soil, which basically takes a long time. This takes a long time. And that's something we really collectively didn't appreciate that much until the past probably like 50 years, which is a whole nother interesting thing. So as the scientists have been studying this and doing some ecological work on you know, the ecology of dead wood, it's really hard to measure, well, how much of a tree. There's a lot of variability within a dead tree as to which part's soft, which part's not. You know, there's a lot going on in different parts. So they have these general diagrams that are somewhat subjective, but it does work in describing a dead tree if you were doing some kind of research. And the same thing applies to a log. So one of the main points from tonight is that dead wood is essential to natural forest ecology, that a natural forest has got to have dead wood at an appropriate level. And when we do forestry, what do we remove? Well, we remove trees. Plantation forestry pretty much completely ignores this reality, and we're trying to get better about that, but I'm going to say a little bit more about that later. But dead wood is essential to natural forest ecology. So there you go. And it's great habitat. Now you notice I've kind of been bonking around on forest ecology here so far. I haven't said much about habitat yet, but dead wood is great habitat. And birders, oh my gosh, birders know this in spades. You know, I mean, all of us have watched a chickadee go in and out of a hole in a cottonwood, or if we're lucky, a pileated woodpecker or a kestrel using a cavity, that sort of thing. So dead wood is a great habitat. Now let's look at a few of these deadwood dependent wildlife species. Love to start with the pileated woodpecker, biggest woodpecker in North America. Great big beak. Look at this guy. I mean, this is incredible what they can pound with this thing. Woodpeckers have adaptations for their lifestyle, including 2 toes up, 2 toes back, stiff tails, really strong neck, as you can imagine. Why don't they get headaches or concussions? Somebody say it out loud. Turn your mute off if you know. I'm not turning the chat box on because I'll get distracted. Dave, somebody know? Okay, nobody? Yeah, you know, I know somebody does. They got padded brains. They got padded brains. Am I coming through okay, Dave? I'm feeling lonesome here. Getting a little bit lost.
Hey, Ken,
Madonna.
do their tongues actually wrap around their skulls?
Oh, I like it. Okay, yes. And another adaptation of woodpeckers is their tongue is twice as long as their beak. So like this pileated's tongue would be all the way out to here. You can see the cursor, right? And so their tongue is sort of cartilaginous. It's not fleshy like ours. And so it retracts and goes through a channel that goes down here and around their brain and actually anchors in their 2 nares on the front. So yes, their tongue goes around their skull, and their skull has padding. As I said, it's highly reinforced. I just read this article that said they were studying woodpecker brains in regard to traumatic head injury relative to military reasons. And they found out that woodpeckers also have this physiological adaptation where they don't, the proteins in their brain don't change under the effect of impact, which they do on our brains. It's like, so they're adapted for banging their head on things. And so they got a combination chisel and tweezer attached to their head. They've got this incredible tongue. And so they will go along, and I know you've watched them do this, they'll go along the surface of a tree, prospecting acoustically, going tap, 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 tap. And then they chop in. If you can see my hands here, I'm waving them around like as if I was swinging an axe. And they'll find the channel where the insect is, then they'll slip that tongue in, and their tongue has barbs on the tip and sticky saliva. So they literally will skewer the insect larva and then pull it out. I just was reading one thing that said that insect larvae, and they think about this too, those little burrowing grub things have these little legs and this chewing head thing, and they're in there wedged into that tunnel. And they're not going to come out easy. They're going to hang on. So the woodpecker can take its tongue and go around the grub, like literally kind of loosen it, like poke her all the way around the sides, and then skewer it and bring it out. How about that? So it's quite a talented ability. And so that's what they feed on. They feed on mostly insects that live in dead wood. And even if it's dead wood that's on part of a live tree. Oh, and so the pileatids make these big oval holes, and they're the only one that can go that deep. Like Harry's and other things will make these smaller, shallower excavations, more of that scale. But this is pileated. Oh, and they will go back to the same trees where there's carpenter ant colonies. And so carpenter ant colonies will live in a hollow tree for a long, long time. And these pileatids will create these feeding holes that go into the carpenter ant colony. They'll go back to the same one, and then like almost like King Kong reaching into a skyscraper to grab somebody, they'll go in there and get an ant. So they eat a lot of carpenter ants. So really pretty amazing animal. Oh,
Ken,
yes.
Could I interrupt a minute?
Yes,
Somehow our screen sharing has gotten messed up, and so I'd like to stop the screen sharing. And I think maybe somehow we've got 2 of us screen sharing, and mine doesn't look very interesting at all. And
Okay.
I'm just seeing you, and I'm not seeing your slides. So I'd like to maybe
Okay.
start over. And I was afraid if I,
Yep.
now, is anybody, are we happy now with what's going on?
Okay, I just turned my screen sharing off, and now I can see everybody. Everybody looks awake. Joyce, are you awake?
Okay, now,
Girl.
why don't you try sharing again and seeing if everybody sees your slides?
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, and I like that. If you have a burning question, yeah, do what Madonna did. Just flick the mic on and ask it. Appreciate
And
that.
if you're not going to see the Ken's presentation, put it on chat. and Lindell and I can try to scope it out.
Oh, yeah, put your question on chat, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Marilyn. Marilyn just, okay, here we go. So I'm going back. Okay, and we've got
Oh, yes.
there it is. Oh, so
Yeah.
you probably, yeah, I think you're right. You had 2 shares going on there,
Yeah. And
and one
mine,
was on top of the other. Good, nice work.
okay.
Okay, good. I'm feeling better here. Okay, here we go. So this was at our house not too long ago. This is a pileated woodpecker, and I planted a snag right outside of my office window in our yard, and it's about 15 feet high, ponderosa pine. Dug a hole, literally put it in the ground like a fence post. Totally recommend it. Here's one of those grubs. This is a flat-headed wood borer that turns into one of those longhorn beetles. And these things can live in dead wood somewhere between 5 and 30 years from one thing I was reading about how far there's. And here's my taxidermy pileated woodpecker. Don't ask about that. Yeah, so here he is. This is my snag right here in the yard. I totally recommend doing this. Put it right by your bird feeder because birds love to sit on dead trees. I think they're not sticky. So here he goes. He came up the tree. Got a really good tear. My wife, Terry Piper, we watched him going along and he tapped, and it was just so cool. He just got this really good look. And this I thought was interesting because it was almost like he was listening for the bugs. He's hung right there for, I don't know, 30 seconds in that posture. So there you go. A beautiful, amazing bird. Biggest woodpecker in North America. So there you go. Other primary cavity excavator species, and we'll say something about this. The hairy woodpecker, kind of every man's woodpecker, the one that occurs in so many habitats. It's about robin size. That's obviously a hairy cavity. The downy woodpecker, so the downy and the hairy, birders can tell the difference. That's one of those things you ask people that sort of get you into the realm of being a birder or not. Can you tell a downy from a hairy? Yeah, and look at the difference in the beak. This is key. They're really the same coloration, but a downy is about 3/4 size of a hairy too. So there you go. And you all knew that. Red-breasted nuthatches will make cavities. Our friend the flicker, curved beak, not as strong of an excavator, say as a pileated. These guys need much softer wood. So they'll often excavate cavities in like cottonwoods and rotten pines. So people will study primary cavity excavators in deadwood ecology. You probably all read this. I know it's a very, very popular read. It's not on Kindle yet, but it's a classic from the last century, 1994, primary cavity excavator, birds in managed, unmanaged Granford Forest habitats of Central Washington's East Cascades. I mean, you talk about a catchy title, right? And so, yeah, this was my master's thesis. So I was so interested in dead trees even back then that I went out and did a 2-year study and found out that the more snags you have, big surprise, the more cavity excavators you have, but the species cohort changes between open forest and closed forest. So there you go. Yes, and I write songs. So now the first of a couple of songs for you here, and we're going to see if I can make this work. We'll see if my helper shows up for the first song. So woodpeckers have kind of a jaunty attitude. You think about the way woodpeckers act, and you could imagine a woodpecker singing this. So we're going to hopefully do a little sound check here. Somebody tell me if that sounds okay. Do da da dee da do ba ba ba. Volume good, Madonna? Tell me. Hello? Hello? Anybody out there?
Yes.
Sounds
Yes.
okay. All right, good. Thank you. I'm a woodpecker, the king of the trees. I got padded brains. I do as I please. Hey, hey. I'm the king of the woods. I'm a crazy red hammer. I make cavities. Horns for you. Horns for me. Hey, hey. I'm the king of the woods. I climb up trees, tapping, tappy, tap, listening for that insect cave. And I find that hollow sound, I axe my way in, and I stick in my sticky tongue. Yum! I'm a woodpecker, the king of the trees. I got padded brains, I do as I please. Hey, hey! I'm the king of the woods. I'm a crazy red hammer and make cavities. Horns for you, horns for me. Hey, hey! I'm the king of the woods. Got rhythm in my bones, I'm synchronized. I bang on the highest place I find. I play my licks, I whack my tricks, I bang on my tree drum, and sometimes I sing just for fun. Hudda-ha-ha, hudda-ha-ha, wicka, 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 hey, hey. I'm the king of the woods. Hudda-ha-ha, hudda-ha-ha, wicka, 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 hey, hey. I'm the king of the woods, rhythm break. Hey, hey. Well, I'm a woodpecker, the king of the trees. I got padded brains, I do as I please. Hey, hey. I'm the king of the woods. Hey, hey. Hey, hey. I'm the king of the woods. I'm a woodpecker. There you go. Thank you. Yay.
All right.
Appreciate that. It's like, did that come out? Did that sound okay?
Well, one of our participants chatted, is someone strangling a cat?
Oh, really? So was I too close to the microphone?
No,
like
no,
that?
no, you're fine. I think he was teasing.
Was that Carl? I bet that was.
No, it was David Kraft.
It'd probably be a good thing. That'd be good for the birds to strangle a cat. Okay, good. So,
Unmute. Well, no.
okay,
Unmute.
I can't tell. I have no sound check, so I can't tell if I was too close to the microphone. But okay, so
No, you weren't. It was
No.
fine.
okay, good.
Someone
Thank-
else said they wanna play that song on their ukulele now.
Oh, you're welcome to. Well, so Madonna, you pitch my website for me.
Okay.
Yeah, it says because I'm not supposed to do that while I'm at work.
Strangling cat guy, David Kraft says, no, it was great. It really was.
Okay. KenBevis.com, one word. You can download that song, David.
Okay.
I would be amazed. But if you, I only ask if you record it on the ukulele, I want to hear the recording. Cool. So excited.
That would be
Here we
neat.
go. Okay, so let's go back to woodpeckers here for a minute. We got another song coming up in a few minutes. So these primary cavity excavators, PCEs, they make a new nest cavity every year. They either make a new one or they clean out an old one, and they use that amazing beacon. If you've ever watched them excavate, it is totally amazing because they will chop, chip, chip, chip. Like I love this picture right here from Greg Thompson, the pileated flicking the chips away, and how in the world do they get inside and turn the corner? But sure enough, the male woodpecker, and this is a male and this one is too, will make a new cavity every year, and then the female will come and inspect it. And sometimes they build a second one, and sometimes they go back and forth and decide which one they're going to do. But they got to do this. They just got to do it. That's why they don't use nest boxes, because it's like, no, I got to build my own. And it's just pretty amazing because once they go inside, how in the world do they turn the corner to do that? But it's a great place to raise young. You think about nature, red in tooth and claw, and how brutal it is. Everything's trying to eat whoever you are. And woodpeckers have a really high fledging rate for birds because they're in this hole, and the parents, they feed them and protect them as a pair. And so it's really a good strategy to do this. So woodpeckers have the ability, they're keystone species, if you know that one, because a keystone species is an animal that changes the environment through its actions to the benefit of other creatures and itself, but to the benefit of others. And a woodpecker can take a solid tree, dead tree usually, and food, water, cover. Those are the three things wildlife needs. And it can turn that solid tree into cover. And so it can make this like amazingly effective cavity. And so the depth of them, so like this is a pileated hole right here. So that's about 3.5 inches there. So 3, 6, 9. This is like 17 or 18 inches deep. And in this tree right here, it's a totally remarkable construction in the tree. And by golly, it's consistent in these proportions, but it's a great place to raise a family. Well, good snags for this to happen are often broken off. They'll often be broken off like halfway or a third of the way up the tree. And this creates a woody cylinder that stands for a while. And I believe they get soft from the top. So, rain and snow and everything will come in from the top. And you often see the cavity about a meter or within the top 5 feet of the broken off tree. This one's been around for a while. This one's already gotten past this stage, but these broken off things, and sometimes you'll see these marvelous structures like this one up by Lost Lake. And look at this, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the other side, there was at least 5 more. So there were at least 10 of those cavities like this in this tree. And I think what happens is as the tree softens from the top, they just basically move down as, kind of like the bottom falls out of this one. So they make one down here and then they do it again. And at a certain point in time, and every now and then you'll see these trees that'll just have numerous cavities in them. And I wonder if the cavities start to run together and they become hollow. So lots of creatures will use these things. Yeah, here's a really good one. Lee Johnson. Some of you might know him. He's an old bird watcher guy up by Bonaparte Lake. He showed me this tree. And on this side of the tree, there's pileated, like sapsucker, hairy. Let's see, he had lived there like 35 years. And he said when he moved in, this tree looked about like that when he got there 35 years earlier. This is a larch. And it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 18. There's like 20 cavities visible on this side of this tree. Totally amazing. So this thing is like an amazing habitat feature in that forest. Yeah, so here's another one with a cavity in it there. There's one that's been standing in the Umtanum over by Yakima for a long time. So often, they'll be well-aged, well-softened, something like this. This is over on the Olympic Peninsula, and this is a spruce. There's a cavity right there. So they vary a lot. Well, okay, so they make these cavities every year. And then the ones that they're not using are sought after by many, many species. And this is kind of actually a lot of these secondary cavity species are the ones that we think of in our birding life, like the bluebird being the milk carton bird, or tree swallows. These are cavity obligates who have to have a hole in a tree to nest, or nest box, which is an imitation hole in a tree. How about this photograph right here on the left? That is with my cell phone through a spotting scope. That's amazing. This is like digiscoping. I don't know. I just sitting on sitting on a planted snag in our yard, right there, right off the porch. So these secondary cavity species, kestrels. Kestrels are also a cavity obligate, the smallest falcon, beautiful creatures. Other birds, smaller birds, which we think of a lot, what is your tree swallow again, wren, brown creeper, black-capped chickadee, the little owls, the saw-whet, pygmies. Let's see which one they both go. Oh yeah, right, and Spokane Audubon is the pygmy owl chapter. So there you go, there's your bird, cavity nester. Liking this, yeah, so small owls will use cavities. A screech, classic, man, they gotta get inside of something. That's in a branch scar on a cottonwood right there. Cavity nesting ducks, that always just sort of cracks me up. It's like, you wouldn't think of ducks as being cavity nesters, but sure enough, the iconic wood duck, hooded merganser, goldeneyes, using cavities in trees that were provided often by woodpeckers. Mammals, flying squirrels, I bet that mink would use a cavity if it could find one. There's a martin. Bats. Bats love to roost in abandoned cavities when they can find them. And of course, Douglas squirrels, these guys just love it. And frankly, even eastern gray squirrels will use cavities where they can find them in a more settled environment. So lots of mammals will use them too. Yeah, here's your eastern gray squirrel with the Douglas squirrel. And you have both in the Spokane vicinity. Am I not correct there? That the eastern grays, you have fox squirrels too, right? Don't you have fox, eastern gray, and Douglas squirrels in the—
We got it all. We're squirrely.
You are, how about, do you have gray diggers, California ground squirrels too? That was for Madonna.
I don't think so.
Okay, nice. But yeah, so squirrels will use cavities too. Don't get distracted, Ken. See, that's why I don't look at the chat box, because I'd be like, oh, look at that. So then it falls over. So the down log, interestingly, this down wood provides home for a lot of small things. And in drier country, it'll be reptiles. Like this is where the fence lizard lives, you know, under and around the log, small mammals. You know, so down logs can be a great habitat too. Yeah, here you go. So different salamanders, different reptiles, some birds like juncos really like to nest next to a log, and small mammals, obviously. So the little stuff using the log, and bears too, because sometimes bears will tear logs apart to get at termites and ants and things. And they'll also dig underneath of them to make a den. So a bear is actually an animal that uses logs. Under the bark in the wood, it's often moist in the summer. This was up by Bonaparte Mountain, and we did a field visit thing, and I was yapping about dead wood, just all this, and I peeled the bark back to show that it was moist. And here's a chorus frog, a tree frog. And this was like up in the pine woods. This was not near a creek or a wetland. So there he is right there using that moist log. They last a long time on the ground, you know, and it varies obviously depending on how wet the environment is, but a down log can be a really resilient habitat feature. So, you know, that's basically the same log. So this is one at the Quinault rainforest, and they had an interpretive sign there, but they pretty much had figured that this log right here had tipped over about 150 years earlier. And now it's got trees growing out of it, but it's still visible as a form in the Quinault rainforest. Now, you think that is a wet environment that has a lot of fungal action. So how about this? You know where Moclips is, one of the more vibrant metropolises in the state of Washington over on the coast. If you don't know where Moclips is, it's on the the southwest corner of the Olympic Mountains, right on the ocean. And this nice lady owned a piece of property there. And she said, you know, you got to see my stump. So we went walking around, and here's this, let's see, Dave's about 6 feet tall. So this is about a 8 or 9 foot in diameter spruce tree that had been cut roughly at the turn of the 20th century. And I like to imagine it was one of the ones they cut to build the biplanes for back in World War I. But laying right just out of sight behind it, right over here, was this. And this is the butt log from that tree that was cut. Oh, and it was cut with springboard. She's got her hand in the springboards there where the old time loggers stood on the boards all the way around it and cut this thing down with crosscut saws. So here's the butt log of that spruce tree laying there probably 110 years later, and it's essentially intact. Well, two things. This is spruce, which is a relatively soft wood, and it's in the Olympic Peninsula. It's in like the bloody rainforest, and it's still intact 100 years later. So this tells you something about how residual wood can be in the forest ecosystem. So these are really important habitats. Did I mention that deadwood's an important habitat? Yeah, I did. So, you know, here's one busted off with a stub and a log. And down in the duff, you know, as the wood breaks down, do this sometime. Go down there and just dig around a little bit, and you might get lucky and find a salamander. This is a northwestern salamander, which is a spectacular, unusual find. And this one was out cruising along the surface in the alder. This animal is about 10 inches long. It's like, the salamanders aren't that big. Well, this one is. And you also will find millipedes, and this is a springtail, and here's a termite, and just all these cool things down there in the duff. So there's a universe of creatures in the duff. This is an Insatina salamander. I didn't take that picture, but it's guarding its eggs down in the rotting wood and in the duff. So pretty amazing. So the fungus relationship to rotting wood is something that is almost mysterious. That you know, I've described the Pacific Northwest, the West, the wet forest in particular, is the great kingdom of fungus, because there's so much mycelium out of sight. And when you see the mushrooms, that's just the fruiting bodies of all of that mycelium, you know, which is down there basically breaking down organic matter and changing the composition of this wood that came out of the trees, from some time back. So the great kingdom of fungus is where we live. So the rotting wood feeds the soil and thus everything. So, slugs, mushrooms, etc. So the life cycle of a dead tree with the primary and secondary species is just part of that whole story. Well, if you're looking at forest ecology and habitat, the dead wood, and this is what this was my revelation that has led me to talk about this continuously, is about 38 to 40% of the vertebrate species in the forest are somehow dependent on dead wood. And there's no, that I know of, single other habitat element affected so much by forest management that will give you this much of a benefit to this many species. So you start thinking through it, it's like the pileated squirrel and the Douglas squirrel and barred owls and chickadees and brown creepers and different levels of use of dead wood. But many of these species are entirely dependent on the presence of dead wood within their home ranges in order to even exist, to even be able to live there. So this is just.
Did I see Bigfoot in there?
You would. Yeah, thank you. Somebody was. You see Sasquatch too? Are they the same thing? And are they wildlife or are they humanoids? And so that does mean, are they the responsibility of the Department of Fish and Wildlife or Health and Human Services? And Madonna, you can answer that one. Yes, exactly.
I think they're cousins.
Right. So it's DSHS. Exactly. And can they have driver's licenses? Are they Canadian citizens or Americans? And can they vote? Prove how old you are, Sasquatch. Anyway, so I bet you they would sit on a dead log. In fact, I'm sure they would. So there you go. Yeah. So, trees are dead, but theirs is a lively death indeed. There's a lot going on in a dead tree. And I don't know, it's been a lifelong study. It's like a dead tree is usually more interesting than a live tree just because of the habitat use. And so there you go. So we got another song coming up here in regard to one of those critters that I was just talking about, and it's the black bear. And my helper has not showed up. So when I pause between the different phrasings, that's because I'm changing the slide, but I'm going to try to do it in a rhythmic manner. So this is called True Bear. And so this is in the voice of the black bear. And black bears, are kind of sassy. So you think about how a black bear reacts to the environment. And that's what this is about. Well, I've been sleeping for 4 months. Man, I'm kind of a mess. Well, I gotta get above ground, gotta find something to eat. I'm hungry. Hungry's a bear. Got little round eyes and ears. Sleek, shiny black coat. Yeah, I look kind of cute, but I'm really ornery. And mostly, I keep to myself, cause I'm a bear. A black bear. The American bear, the true bear, the true bear. Ursus americana, I ain't no horribilis. Don't eat no bamboo, I don't sleep on the ice, I don't do no circus tricks. No, cause I'm a bear, a black bear. The American bear, the true bear, the true bear. We all got Yogi and Smokey. I don't look nothing like them. Whoa, they're in cartoons. Oh, I go in the woods, it's true. Cause I'm a bear, and I don't care. I'm out cruising in the autumn sunshine, looking for something to eat. An old rotten carcass or some dry choked cherries, I don't care. Cause I'm a bear. A mouse. A mouse. There watch this. I'll just hit the button. There we go. Ours is American. I ain't no dang grizzly bear. Eat no bamboo. I don't sleep on the ice. I don't do no tricks for you. No, 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 because I'm a bear. A black bear. The American bear. True bear, the true bear, big finish. The true bear.
All right, Ken, on the chat, the Sasquatches want to play sax with you.
All right, I gotta go look. Can I see it? I can't see it. Is there a picture of the Sasquatch playing saxophone?
No, they just said they want to play with you.
That song would be good with saxophone, wouldn't
They
it?
would.
I got it with harmonica, so check it out. Check it out.
That bear was dancing to your music on the tree.
Isn't that fun? Yeah.
What I want to know is where you were when all of us were teaching environmental ed in all the elementary schools. You would have been a big asset.
Oh, my bad. You know, if not for a twist of fate where I met a creature called the spotted owl, I was going to be a science teacher. I went to school and got my science teaching degree and got pulled down the path of being a wildlife biologist. And it actually served me well in all the training and things. So I appreciate that. That video was given to me through a whole different fluke, you know, and I saw it and it was like, hey. So that's what, cool. And yeah, my wife came in and was pushing the buttons for me and anyway, so thank you. That was fun. I got one more song for you here at the end, if you'd like. So people will say like, well, there's plenty of snags out there. You know, they're over there. Well, not really. This is a typical even age harvest. It's Western Washington, but you know, we've all seen clear cuts where you essentially have started to stand over. And this is interesting because down here by the creek, here's one snag and right in the top of it is a bald eagle nest. So it's like there's one good wildlife tree with a bald eagle in it. It's like, all right. And you know, hazard trees, this whole notion of dead trees being these scary things that are going to fall on your head. This was in a picnic area that was hardly ever used. This still pisses me off. And the Pend Oreille County Parks went through, and here's this hollow tree. They could have they cut it down because it was like, and nobody uses that picnic area. They destroyed this habitat feature. And also, now, all right, confessional, everybody look at your feet. How many of us, myself included, have gone out gathering firewood and looked for that big, beautiful, dead Douglas fir snag or larch, even worse, and cut it down and bucked it up and made it into firewood? And this has been an ongoing, continuous activity all through, well, forested land everywhere, not just the Northwest. And so there are a lot of stands that are on small lands that people have been harvesting firewood for years and years and years, and essentially taken out the developing cohort of older snags. So ongoing management. So, okay, fine, Ken, we get it. You know, wildlife trees, habitat, snags, all important stuff. Well, how many do we really need? Well, there's been a lot of work on this where you essentially come over the first threshold of like, okay, these are important habitat. Well, it's kind of complicated because they vary a lot. You know, a larger snag provides for more species, meaning there's more wood for more holes. A soft snag is needed, say, by a flicker, not a hard one that a pileated could excavate, say. Some tree species last longer. Better is I should need to put quotes around that because better depends. I mean, like, so here's a hairy woodpecker nesting in a 8-inch alder. I think that's an alder. You know, here's a chickadee cavity in like a 6-inch Douglas fir that was hollowed out and it went through the bark. So you can get a lot of use out of things that seem unlikely. Well, the forest practice rules, this is a forestry thing. I got my DNR hat on here. Actually says 2 wildlife trees will be provided per acre where they exist that provide habitat for cavity nesting species. However, and this does indicate the intent of this habitat feature being recognized. However, if they're considered a safety hazard, meaning it could fall on anybody working within reach, then many of them are cut, or sometimes they're even required to be cut. And so you wind up losing them anyway, or sometimes they'll harvest them and sell them for firewood. And so the intent is there, but it's hardly ever enforced. But it's a good thing to have on the books. Now, my small landowners, the small forest landowner, it's so interesting because when we do a values survey, consistently the top 3 values will be something about aesthetics, something about a healthy forest, and something about wildlife habitat. Everybody wants to provide good wildlife habitat, usually for wildlife viewing too. Hardly ever is it for hunting, hardly ever. Sometimes people will shoot a deer in their place, but they rarely will manage the habitat for game. It's usually for kind of like, oh, I want all the birds. Okay, which means I would suggest the full suite of native species, which include cavity dwellers. And so here's Dan Lynn, and I like to say when I'm with DNR, you can even teach a DNR forester to like snags. So Dan is showing off this little one right here. So they really like it. So people say, all right, how many should we have? Well, I say, well, let's try for 4 per acre. Give me 2 hard, 2 soft. But hardly ever does anybody count them and really manage for an objective. So really the best strategy is to know what a good dead tree looks like and to keep it every chance you can and to advocate for those. So I'll throw in a little plug here, working with your local parks districts or the greenway people. This is an important thing to have on the table so that your maintenance people don't always cut them down, which has been a habit in many, many places like that picnic area I showed you. So bigger is better. Broken tops are great. When it has a broken top, they don't tip over as easily because there's less weight. That whole thing about which species is the best? Well, yeah, but any species is okay. We'll take what we can get. But the best would be Douglas fir, cedars if you got them, because of the way they rot. Ponderosa pine are good. Grand fir are actually excellent trees for this. Hardwoods are good, particularly when they're partially alive. They can have like a dead top. Hardwoods tend to rot out at the roots more quickly, but they have great characteristics. So cottonwood, big leaf maple, that's a west side thing. But yeah, so take what you can get. When you do it. So you want to mimic nature in management. These are naturals, but if you don't have them, make some. There's that one beautiful one again. And how could you create this, say from an actual standing dead tree that still had the crown? There's different ways to do it. So one great thing is you can use climbers to go up and take the top out of the tree to move this along. You can designate them. This is over at Suncadia. So, these are ones that are going to stay up for a long time and they're going to rot in place. They're not going to tip over and land on your garage, because they've been broken off. So arborist, if you get a good arborist and you say, hey, make me a habitat tree, they're like, sure. Most of them know how to do that. And what they basically do is crown reduction. So they go up and you can get them to leave some branch stubs and stuff, but they'll take the top out of the tree and then the piece on the ground, you get to decide what to do with it. But it changes the otherwise potentially hazardous tree. Let's say it's near your house. Or just out in the field, it changes it into a broken off stub that'll last longer. You can create them by girdling. The problem here is that then they rot out from the bottom, but this does work. And this tree was girdled to make a perch in an opening, and it worked. I need to put a picture. This was like 7 years ago, and this is now a beautiful snag out in this little opening. So I've had people girdle them up high. So girdle the top. And I've often thought, why couldn't you cut it halfway through? Then this they'll die, and then it'll blow over in a wind, and you'll have that broken off snag. So lots of different ways you can do it. In harvesting, so when people are logging, most logging these days, and somebody in the group here has been around logging, is being done with these mechanical harvesting machines. And this was a particularly steep situation where this is an actual 90% slope where the trees were growing out sideways. And this machine was cabled to another machine up. I'm just kidding. No, watch this. So watch this machine. Okay. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, 1013, 1014. That's 15 seconds. And he just made, that's actually about 8 feet high. So that's one of those broken off snags. Right there in a stand, and look around this stand. There's no snags. This stand has been selectively harvested over and over. And the guy that took the video for me was wearing those shoes right there. So I always suggest this. Do this always in a harvest unit when there's some reason that the bottom is going to get wasted anyway. Put it in your contract. If you're doing any logging, tell your logger, make 2 of those. You know, you got a 10-acre harvest. Give me 20. Cut off 20 trees, and I want you to count them. And they'll do it. So 8 foot minimum, just a suggestion. But that right there is an enormously successful strategy that's not used very much, which is crazy to me. Don't do it like this. Don't. Here's the bobcat with the ladder tied to the tree, then a second ladder tied to the tree. And so anyway, yeah, you use professionals for this stuff. It works. So if you've ever been down Interstate 90 over there by Roslyn, you'll see the sign to Suncadia. Well, when they laid out the Suncadia development, they wanted wildlife habitat as part of the project. And they had this, oh gosh, how would you describe it? A middle-aged Douglas fir ponderosa pine forest right outside of Cle Elum and Roslyn that had been owned by Plum Creek for years. And people had been gathering firewood, riding their motorbikes and all this all through there for years. There wasn't a snag in sight. And when I got to be on the team that helped plan this thing, and they said, we want wildlife. And I said, well, you need to make some snags. And to my utter astonishment, Phil Hess, the consultant, one of my heroes now because he gets it, he's like, okay, so they made 500 of these stubs. And this was cut off with the falling machine in the year 2000. So this picture was taken in, well, 2013, obviously, in somebody's front yard. And there are bluebirds there, there's sapsuckers, there's woodpeckers, I'm sure there's flying squirrels that would otherwise not be in that forest if they had not done this technique. And they bought into it so much, and I'm so tickled with this, that they just made a second round, because if you looked at this habitat feature, they're going to have a predictable lifespan, which is going to be in the order of decades, admittedly, but probably every 40 to 50 years, you ought to make a new batch of these things. And they're actually embarking on that, which is pretty darn cool. So fires, let's just say this is in response to this year, the big fires. You know, you get a lot of dead wood coming out of fires, and this indeed is quite the, introduction of a cohort of snags. Well, you might have fires that are of variable burn intensity, you know, where you get a pocket of mortality and a bunch of trees here that actually come out more vigorous. And in this kind of scenario, you can still have your living green forest with a new cohort of snags coming in. Well, a lot of times our instinct is, well, shouldn't we go in here and salvage? Well, salvage logging has several big issues, but one of which is soil damage, because you got to get in there within a year, because basically the trees dry out and they're unmarketable. And so, but look at the soil. Often it's like just powder. It's been essentially ruined for the third of the time being, and does a lot of damage. So that's an interesting thing. But you know, the forests recover pretty remarkably, this stand right here is off of Carlton over near Peargin Lake. And this is like the same year as the fire. So the fire was in July. This picture was taken like in late September. And these aspens had already sprouted back. Today, 6 years later, 6 years later, this is like 10-foot high aspens. I need to put a picture of that right next to it. And these are snags sticking out of this aspen stand. And the grasses, as you know, is just incredible. And here's another stand of mix. So fire has a really variable outcome. So I'm going to tell a story here. And this is our property. This is Terry Piper and myself. This is looking from our driveway across to the road. And this is what it looked like when we moved in the year 2008. So this is actually our little forest, these beautiful open grown pine trees with this really dense understory of bitterbrush. So this bitterbrush is like 6 feet high, great deer habitat, we might add. And, you know, we were enjoying our little open ponderosa pine forest. And these are some of the species we would see: red-breasted nuthatch, grosbeak, Clark's nutcracker. We had Douglas squirrels that were running around eating the pine cones here. Quite a few hummingbirds, interestingly, but not many woodpeckers. And in our whole forest, there was only one snag that had died fairly recently. So it wasn't even old enough to be a cavity snag yet. Well, August 1st, 2014, a fire started on Highway 20 from a flat tire on a trailer. And it burned, 800 acres in 3 hours, went a mile in 45 minutes. The firefighters saved our house. Here's our house right here. But it roared down through that same, so that last picture was taken right here looking this way. So here's that same draw, so that other picture was taken from right up about here. So all of these trees died. And so this whole forest was, I mean, look at the bitterbrush, it's gone. And this was quite shocking, as you can imagine, but they saved our house and we still live here. And so we had local arborists come out. This is Owen Almquist, and I had him knock the tops out of 14 trees on the supposition that that was going to help them last longer. And so he did. If you ever hire an arborist to do something like this, clean up the material yourself and hire them by the hour and do as many as you can while you got the guy, or got the person, because they're pretty amazing. And so this was taken this spring when it was green. Right now, this is all white. But look what happened. So that first picture was taken right up over here, looking this way. Second one was taken looking that way. And look at these trees. So look at the species shift. So this is from this year. So this tree right here, which by the way is the same one that he was hanging in topping. We had a kestrel nest right there in the top. There was a flicker nest in the middle. And there was a bluebird nest down here, and there actually was another nest, a swallow, I believe, in the box down there inside. So we've had this species shift in this snag forest where I actually think our species diversity went up considerably, and we have a much higher proportion of these cavity species. Oh, and this year we had three, but there were two at least, Lewis's woodpecker nest, one of which was right here in that snag right there. And the other one was up on the neighbor's property. So just that the rebound, look how green it is. We had ceanothus come in that we didn't have before. It was snowberry. And so it's been a remarkable recovery. So it's an irony of the world that the snag guy owns a snag patch now. And it's been a fascinating study to watch how it changes. If you do have experience with a fire or know somebody, there's this website, the Woodland Fish and Wildlife. I like to call it the project. A bundle of publications that are intended for small forest landowners. So write down that website or somehow record that and go to that. And we have one called After the Burn that's aimed at helping people decide what to do if they have a forest that burned. So here's a couple of take-home messages. Dead wood is not just cool, it's vitally important to the forest ecosystem. To a healthy forest, you got to have some dead wood. Provides crucial habitat for, I call it about a third, that's at 38 to 40%. It's critical for a whole bunch of species. And it can be provided for in management. Arborists can be a key player on small private parcels because they're the ones that can deal with the danger trees for you. And the dead trees are beautiful and full of life. And so I think one of the jobs of Audubon, and all of the naturalist and bird animal lovers is to essentially make sure that when people don't know that you turn their head on that. It's like, oh, no, those are great habitat. Look at the bluebird up there. And it's pretty interesting because we're making a lot of headway on that particular point. And every now and then you'll see some place where like a park district has topped a tree. There's one right by the ice rink in Winthrop where they got the message and there was a dead pine tree and they made a big snag out of it that's short enough that it won't hit anything if it falls over. So here's the suggestion. Insist on it. It's not a boutique thing. Like this family right here, they own 160 acres up near Lake Wenatchee. And this guy is an arborist. And they had this young forest that had been replanted like in 1978 or something. So you can imagine the age, but it had been clear cut and there's really no snags. So this dude is like, he was showing me all these snags they had made. And I was just beyond myself and being excited. So it can be, and this whole family right here was totally devoted to the importance of dead trees and were concerned that they were making enough of them. And so I just thought that was a marvelous dilemma to have. Healthy forest, there's a lot of talk about healthy forest. I want a healthy forest. Well, that's kind of like mom and apple pie. And it's not just about, vigorous green trees that can resist drought and bugs. And so, there's a really nice one. This was on a private parcel that's been thinned. This is an interesting tidbit here too, because density management is important in these dry forests. We really do have too many trees in most places, but you need some of the big dead ones mixed in, because an open place like this with this right snake, oh God, this would be great habitat for, let's say, a pygmy owl. Pygmy owl could nest in here, sit over here, hunt a mouse down here, get a chickadee over there. So yeah, healthy forest includes dead wood. So how do I look at the chat box? I have one more song I could do and then do questions, or let's do the questions. And then if you want the song, if you're not too tired.
Yeah, I think we need to move on to the questions because
Okay, let's do it.
Started.
Yeah, what time is it? I went over time probably.
It's 8:23.
Oh, good, we're doing great. Okay, good. Okay, let's see. So how do I show the chat box? Okay, you're gonna read me the questions, right?
I'll read you any questions that come in. And there have been a number of comments loving your song and Western Larch.
Oh, aren't they wonderful? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Western Larch is a wonderful tree, yes. And they do make really good habitat trees.
Yeah.
Okay, dang it. Okay, are you still seeing my screen now?
Yeah, you need to stop sharing or.
Okay, I gotta go new share. Let's go back to I'm trying to find the chat box.
I think if you stop sharing, then.
Oh, I stop share, then we go to the home screen. There it is, okay.
There we go.
Okay, Theodore, this is fun. Lots of woodpeckers. Hey, Tanya, yeah, you got lots of, Tanya Thomas lives in a snag patch too. Nice, okay. Well, let's see, great song. Do the woodpeckers remove the wood shavings from the holes? Yes, I think they do. They mostly throw them out like those ones we saw while they're digging the cavities. Yep. So they have a, excuse me, combination chisel and tweezer attached to their face. Yes. Yep. Nice. Well, good. Well, thank you, Marilyn. Inspired. I like that. Well, because I really do believe that we have a long-standing bias against, dead trees. And those of us who are aware of habitat, and I say those of us because Auduboners, holy smokes, we're like habitat aficionados. It's an important message to throw out there. And you can't protect every single dead tree always. Sometimes there really is a tree that's a hazard. It's a certain kind of tree, whatever. But there's lots of ways to keep them on the landscape. And so there you go.
Hey, Ken, one question or comment on on the chat that from Carl Barentine, who's going to be doing our presentation next month.
Okay.
And actually, it just went to me, so you wouldn't see it. Great presentation, Ken. Thanks. P.S. Snags makes swell overwintering habitat for adult moths, too. He's talking about
Oh,
to us next month.
nice. Okay, there's one. Okay, there you go. And bees, lots of different bees will use them, not just honeybees, but native bees. Nice. Yeah, so the overwintering element of wood too. Thank you, Carl. I should work that in here somewhere. Maybe you could send me some information about what what it means to have different creatures. Okay, so I was going to put my email address up here. There it is. So there's my email address right there. So if you got good information, comments, Carl, like send me a link about moth overwintering. That's a really good one. I appreciate that. And I got photos from different people, Greg Thompson, Contron, my wife, Terry Piper. So thank you there. And if you want, I have a song about ravens that I can close with. What do you think?
One more question. In topping, would a third off the top be a good standard?
Yeah, you mean for topping a tree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say really like halfway, so that you remove most of the crown and then leave a few branches. Oh, and then have your arborist just take a saw and jag it up a little bit, make it look like it broke. And it's kind of amazing if they're jagged up even a little bit. You won't, I think it might hasten rot, but I honestly don't think it matters that much. But you won't look at it and go, why was that tree cut off? Your eye will go right past, like, oh, look, it's a natural tree. So yeah, but yeah, I'd say half. Yep, something like that, a third to half. And it really depends on the tree. And because part of the goal of topping is to get enough weight out of the crown that over time it won't, tip all the way over. We want it to stand. We want it to stand and rot in place, even though logs are wonderful. I mean, they're going to wind up as a log anyway. Yeah.
So follow up on that is, if it's clean for 100 feet, would that still stand?
Probably. It would really depend on the soil and what kind of root mass it has and what species, because Doug firs will last longer. Pines, it's really interesting because sometimes pines rot out at the roots and tip over. So if it was a pine, I would tend to go shorter, like a third. But I mean, that's just an off the cuff, because really just get the crown out of it so you get the weight out of the top, and that's going to give it the best chance of standing for a long time. Yeah. And this becomes an interesting issue for hazard trees on people's property, because a lot of times there will be a tree that's, it's leaning towards the house, something like that. And I've had this comment numerous times where somebody made a habitat tree out of it. Well, two things. One, you still have a tree. You're looking at it from ground level and it's still there. It's like, look, there's my favorite tree. Oh, and as it breaks down, there'll be all these birds and things that come and use it. And, it's like, I got my woodpecker tree right there. It's pretty cool. So there you go. Okay, coach me through here. Would you like to hear the Raven song, and then we'll stop?
Go for it, Ken. We've got participants leaving, so.
I'd like to hear it.
If they
Go
gotta
for
go, they gotta go. Well, we have lots of ravens in our region, and ravens are smart. This is in the voice of the raven. Black as the night, high in the sky, I soar with the eagles with a glint in my eye. High in the river, I'm way above you. High in the river, I'm smarter than you. tips in the clouds, trick sparrow rolls. I sing in my language, quack, quack, kind of wall. I am the raven, I look down on you. I am the raven, I'm smarter than you. Dark, powerful beast, I eat eyes and crush bones, fly my trails every morning, find kills on your road. I am the raven, thanks for the chow. I am the raven, got lots of know-how. Gorgeous black feathers that shine in the light. I'm the pinnacle of creation, but God's got me right. I am the raven, I croak nevermore. I am the raven, I perch at your door. The hider and the clinking saw me as a god. I pulled people from clam shells, and now I sit atop the totem pole. Binocular eyes, I watch you from above. I admire your tricks, but you ain't so wise. I am the raven, I'm better than you. I am the raven, I'm smarter than you. Black as the night, high in the sky, I soar with the eagles, my people won't die. I am the raven, I will outlast you. I am the raven, I'm smarter than you. There you go. Well, thanks everybody. That was
Thank
great
you, Ken.
fun. See if I can get out